Hi, I'm Terry Brock with TerryBrock.com. International travel today is important, and doing business internationally gives you, as a thought leader, a lot of latitude to do even more. We've got an expert with us today who travels the world literally extensively, and she's got some tips that can help you on the reason to do that. Her name is Cheryl Cran, and she joins us from her office in Vancouver over there in British Columbia. Thanks for being with us today, Cheryl.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
Well, I know that in international work, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people that are doing it. What are some of the main reasons you see and the benefit of working internationally in today's environment?
Well, frankly, Terry, in my opinion, we are a global economy,
Hmm.
and we need to all be looking at diversifying our business. For me, I'm a Canadian who works in the U.S., who works in other countries. If I rely simply on my own one economy, which is the Canadian economy, to support my business, I'm limited in the amount of business that I can grow. And I really believe the future for all in industry is that global expansion, having global partners and global business in order to diversify the business.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because you say because you limit it to only Canada would be there, you can insert country wherever you are, and I
Yes.
think that's very important to be there. It seemed like there's some other good reasons too. Like some people are concerned about the political or the economic trends that are going on right now. What role do you see that playing with the international business that we do today?
Well, I think that's so relevant. When I was in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur in April, I was working there, and it was just before their election. And it was interesting because I'm there, and I actually asked that question about how do the politics in Malaysia affect business in Malaysia. And many of them who live there say, well, we have business in other countries for that very reason, because we don't know the future stability of our country's politics. So that, for instance, the client that I was working with has partners in Australia and Indonesia and other neighboring countries, because the political climate there is so tenuous that they can't rely on it from a business standpoint. Now, in Canada, even, we have maybe a bit more of a stable political environment, but even then, we just had a recent provincial election, and had it gone the way that I had hoped it wouldn't go, in other words, the party I voted for got in, but there are politics that are pro-business, as you and I know, and there are politics that are not. And I
Hmm.
think that we have to look at that when we are looking at our business strategy, is how do the politics in the countries that I plan to work with, how could they affect me doing business in that country?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point because throughout history, we've seen a precarious nature of any country, and the economy can be unstable. It can change quickly, and the danger comes if we think, oh, for the last few years it's been fine in this country, whatever this
Yeah.
country is, and we think, well, it'll always continue that way. And of course, our country is different. We will stay the same. Well, guess what? The Romans said that, and they
Yeah.
thought the Roman Empire would be around forever. They'd been around for a few thousand years, eventually crumbled. We look at the Ottoman Empire. We look at the Dutch Empire, the British Empire. All of them came, went up, and then started coming down. And it just makes a lot of sense to diversify in different areas. I think you raised some very good points on that.
Well, I think, the nature of economy is cyclical, and it would be very arrogant for any country to think that somehow, because they're having a very affluent time at the present, it would be very arrogant to consider that would maintain the status quo for time to come. Everything's cyclical, so we can all experience a downflow in every country that we live in or work in.
Yeah, you're
So.
absolutely right. Well, now, one of the things that I want to share with our audience is very practical and relevant is when you're doing that travel, it sometimes can wear and tear on your body. And you shared with me a secret that you said, Terry, this is the very best. So I'm listening to what Cheryl Cran has to say because it's important. And you gave me some advice that I'm going, yeah, okay, maybe, because I'm a journalist and we're trained to be very skeptical. But I tried it and it really is working. Share with us that secret that everyone
Yeah.
who travels internationally needs to know.
It's so funny. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer and a very obvious when I would say it. But frankly, for me, the biggest difference in all the international travel, and as you know, Terry, at the end of March, I was in Australia, and then I was in South Africa, and I went from South Africa to Malaysia, and Malaysia to Singapore, and then Singapore back to Vancouver. So quite a bit of air travel in a compressed period of time. And the thing that made the biggest difference for me was, wait for it, drum roll, Compression stockings.
So tell us, what are compression stockings?
Well, they're pressurized stockings that you can buy them in varying degrees of pressure. But what they do is you wear them on your feet and they compress the arteries and the blood flow and moves it all, keeps it all towards the heart. And interesting, I can't take credit for this, by the way. I was at the German Speakers Association meeting in September, and I had traveled from Vancouver to Toronto, Toronto to Dusseldorf. And I'm sitting there, my legs had swollen, and I was quite uncomfortable. I felt lethargic and tired, and I turned to a colleague, and you know this colleague, Graham Codrington, and I turned to Graham and I said, oh, look at my legs, it's so uncomfortable. He said, Cheryl, he says, and Graham does a lot of international travel and work, and he said, Cheryl, for the last 3 years, all I've been doing is wearing compression stockings. And I had the same reaction you had. I kind of went, well, really? Like, what do you mean? And so I asked my doctor about it, and my doctor said, yes, it makes complete sense, because when you're on an airplane, specifically long-haul flights, and I don't care if you're flying business or the back of the bus, you're still being succumbed to less moisture in the air, less oxygen, and gravity. So all three of those things contribute to the body. The blood vessels can't function, the blood flow, the heart can't pump the way it's normally supposed to pump. And what the compression stockings do is, A, they gave me major energy. I can honestly say I did not feel as one would normally feel fatigued, when I got to my location. And B, I didn't feel like I was able to sleep on the airplane easier, and I don't know if there's a correlation there. And C, you prevent embolism or blood clots, which is a very serious concern with all the air travel that you and I do.
Yes.
So, so they work, and that's my big secret. I swear, everybody needs to get them. And by the way, you don't have to spend a lot of money. The website that my husband and I bought our stockings from, I think we gave it to you, Terry. It's Ames.com.
Ames.com. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you don't need a doctor's prescription to go there. You just get them. Now, I think I purchased the second highest pressure. I think it's 25 pounds per, however they do the pressurizing. But they're really hard to get on. I mean, you have to literally tug and roll and really work to get them on. As a woman, I bought the thigh-high ones because I wanted to really keep the blood going, as high as I could. And for me, they worked like a dream. My husband bought the knee-high ones, and he found them equally effective. So,
very good. Yeah, and I remember getting a note from your husband, Reg, and he said, yes, we recommend those. So I went out and got some myself. And matter of fact, in full disclosure to our audience right now, I'm wearing compression socks, as we said. Now, you call it compression stockings. We call them compression socks here in the U.S., but they work just fine, and that's really important. It's a fun thing. We can laugh about it, but it really does make a difference when you're doing that international travel.
I swear by them. I swear that was how I was able to. And for example, I flew from Johannesburg to Kuala Lumpur, and I connected through Dubai. So that's a long flying cycle. And I think I got 3 hours of sleep. It helps to fly Emirates business class.
Yes, very nice.
So I got 3 hours of sleep, but when I got there, I had to do a full day program, and honestly, I was as good as I was quite surprised at how much of a difference they made.
Yeah, they do. Well, going back to the subject of international work and the kind of things that we'll do in there, what do you see for the future, and what would you recommend for someone who says, okay, I'd like to do a little bit more internationally, I'd like to explore that more? Where's a good place for them to start, and how would they find out more about that?
It's interesting. I don't know about you, Terry, but I never ever had I never had it in my mind as a strategic plan to go global. It was never, my business was Canada and the U.S., and in the time that I've been in business, I've done business in London and Scotland, and I've spoken in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'd never made it a part of my strategy. But here's the thing. What's really important is to make those connections with people in the countries that you wish to work in. To me, that's a no-brainer. And once I knew that in my role as a GSF president that I would be traveling to these countries, I immediately reached out to all of the contacts that I had in those countries and said, I'm going to be there. Here's what I can do for services and work. Are you interested in taking me up on it? And as it turned out, I ended up getting business in Kuala Lumpur and in Singapore, and I ended up working a fair amount while I was, away. So, and if you don't have contacts, go to your circle of influence in your local market, because it's likely that someone has contacts. For example, a client of mine here, when she found out that I was heading to Australia, referred me to a major, it's an internationally known steel manufacturer who she felt could really use my services. And now I'm working with them to put together a proposal. And if I hadn't asked her, I wouldn't have known that there was a contact in Australia while I was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think it's about thinking beyond our local market. And as we're talking to our clients, saying, I'm going global, or my business is scalable and I am able to launch it in multinational markets. Talking that way. A couple simple things I did on my URL on my website. I actually secured the URL called globalkeynotespeaker.com.
Good.
And so when you go to CherylCran.com, if you were to also key in Global Keynote Speaker, you would go to CherylCran.com.
Very smart.
I've also written articles on working in global markets. I've made sure that I get testimonials from my global clients. I've also been asking my global clients for referrals and saying, look, I'm coming back to Asia in October. Would you like to bring me, into your organization to do something for you?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the things that, for me, now that I have the lens open for global, that's what I will continue to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's really good because what you're talking about, it's really relationships. People wonder, how do I get over here in this country or that country, et cetera? Well, it's the same as you want to go to any city in your own country. You build relationships, and that's what you've been doing so brilliantly well, Cheryl, and we appreciate your information today. And if someone says, okay, I want to find out more about this and find out how Cheryl can come in and teach our people some of the leadership principles that you talk about, international ideas, et cetera, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Oh, thanks, Terry. Probably the best is my main URL, which is CherylCran.com. It's just my name. And also, you can find me on YouTube. I have videos and videos on leadership and some of the international work I've been doing. And also another resource, as you and I know, Terry, because we're members of it, is our Global Speakers organization, so globalspeakers.net. For even though we may have viewers not part of that community, there is some information on there that's related to working in different countries that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right. Well, Cheryl Cran, always great to hear from you and learn about really helpful things, including compression socks and practical areas like that. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Terry.